so explaining scansion. Scansion is basically breaking down lines of poetry into syllables based on whether they're long or short. So if it's long, you're going to put this over the syllable, and if it's short, you're going to put this over the syllable. And that's essentially it. And there are different patterns depending on what meter the poet is using, and we'll go over those here in a second. I guess like a couple basic things you might remember, like doing this in English classes, like breaking it down and being like, you know, the cat in the, and clapping along. Most of the time you can tell if it's long or not based on like how you pronounce it, so hopefully your pronunciation is up. So it's long by nature if it's if it has a diphthong over it. So for example, the word lightus, this is a diphthong, so it's automatically going to be long. Also the word, things like the word Catullus, this I here is pronounced like an E, captivus, it's long, so you're going to put like a long mark over that. Things can also be long based on position, so libellum, 2 or more consonants, and the syllable that comes directly after it is automatically going to be long. So those are like a couple of rules to keep in mind. Another thing I'm going to throw out to you is a thing called elisions. Elisions happen in poetry. Words kind of combine into one. So an example might be if you have quare habe in a sentence. The E and the H is going to align and make it become one word, so it basically becomes quare habe. And that is done for meter's sake, to stick to the meter, so there's like a little bit of like breaking the rules of grammar, squishing words together to make it fit the meter, because what matters is the syllables. So rules for elisions. If you have a vowel next to a vowel, well, if the word ends in a vowel and the next word starts with a vowel, then that's going to elide. Also, like we saw in the example, if you have a vowel and an H, that's going to elide. And then also, if you have an M and then a vowel at the next word, that's going to elide. Or if you have an M and an H, that's going to elide. Although you don't really see this one as much. So that's a lot of craziness that I just threw at you. And let me give you some like actual words to look at. I guess there are 3 like most important types of meter that you need to know. And that's hendecasyllabic. It's a lot of words. It's composed of 5 feet. Hendecasyllabic was Catullus's like most used meter, so that's the one that you're going to need the most. There's also dactylic hexameter. And that is the one that's used in the Aeneid a lot, in epics. It's the most complicated one, so we're not really going to go over it today. You don't need to. It's also used in poem 62 for Catullus, because it's a bit of a longer poem. And I guess we can go over that then if we ever get to it. You can kind of practice on your time, but I want you to get used to like the basics of scanning first. And then lastly, there's the elegiac couplet, which is 2 lines, very simple, and it has like 6 feet for the first line, and like I want to say 5.5 or 4.5 for the second, something like that. And this is used in a couple of Catullus poems, but not most of them. So the one that we're going to focus on today, well, mostly, is the hendecasyllabic. So I'm going to draw out a chart here. So like I said, it has 5 feet. for the last foot, you generally, well, okay, so you start from the last because it's easier to start from the back to the front. So it looks something like this. You put an X when you start, then it goes long, short, long, short, long, short, short, long, and then it can be like long, long, short, long, or long, short, depending on what the word looks like. Anyway, this is what you need to know, and because this is what hendecasyllabics looks like. So that might be like confusing, like what do all these symbols mean, but I'll give you an example, like sentence, and I'll show you in practice. So Catullus 1, which is the first poem we'll be looking at, is Qui Dono Lepidum. No libellum. Okay, so we start from the back and move this way. The first thing what you're going to want to do though is check to see if there's any elisions. So check like the last vowel in the first word, like the last letter in the first letter of each of your words, to make sure there are no elisions, and there's none in this one. And then you can kind of just go about scanning. So like we said before, the first syllable, I guess the last, depending on how you want to look at it, is always just mark it as X. Doesn't matter too much. So libellum, that's 3 syllables there. Last syllable, X. This one is going to automatically be long, just because of the pattern that we memorized. So that's our first, that's the 5th foot, I guess. And then the next thing is short long, so li, womb. That's the 4th. And for our 3rd, it's, if you remember, short and long, so no, doom. That's the 3rd. The 2nd is short, short, long, so le, la, p, le, no. That's the 2nd. And the last one can kind of be whatever, but there's a diphthong here, so you know that's long. And then you kind of just have to guess from there, I guess, but based on how you pronounce it, do, no, instead of, the O here is pronounced just like this other O here, it's pronounced long, so you're going to mark it as long. And that just all comes with practice of getting used to like what it's going to look like. So that's basically how you scan, and you just get used to that pattern. The hardest part is this first foot here, because you're not going to really have a pattern. It's kind of whatever it wants to be. And so remembering like, okay, diphthongs are going to be long, and if it follows 2 consonants or more, or if it's just long because you can tell because it's pronounced long, things like that. Or, you know, our handy dandy macrums that we remember from, you know, memorizing like second conjugation infinitives and ablative first declension nouns, things like that, where you know that it's long because of the macron, stuff like that. Okay, so elegiac couplet is a little bit harder just because it has less of a pattern to it and more of like a guessing, but it still does have a pattern. Now, earlier I might have said it just has 2 lines. What I meant is like just like a English couplet, I guess, like what you see in Shakespeare. You can kind of tell it's a couplet because it has like a 2-line structure to it, like you can see, and then there's like an indent there. That's what they generally look like. So if you ever see that in a poem, you know it's going to be an elegiac couplet and have that meter. Now the first line has 6 feet, and the second line has 5 feet. I think I said like 5.5 or something weird. What I meant was that it has 5 feet, but it has weird things like half feet in them. And I'll explain what that is in a second. So the first line is going to have right? And it's going to look like this. Long, long. Short, 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 long. Always. And then short, short, long, or long, long for the rest of it. And that you'll just have to like kind of figure out on your own. And the second one, instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it goes 1, 2, kind of a half, 4, 5, and then the other half. And that's what, I'll explain what this looks like. It basically is just going to be like one syllable there. So there's X, short, short, long, just like in the other one. Short, short, long, long, and then short, short, long, or long, long, the variety. Now, here's an example. It's long because there's so many feet in it. The first thing you're going to want to do always when you're checking, when you're scanning something, is to check for elisions. So look for vowels next to vowels at the ends and beginnings of sentences, or M's next to vowels and that sort of thing. And there's only one in this sentence. It's right here, Formosa S, so it becomes Formosest. Great, right? And pattern comes first, so we'll start with our pattern, what we know, before we do the kind of guessing game for the rest of the half. So that's why we start at the end, because our pattern's always going to be long, long. You can always put an X at the end, though. So longa, long, long. That's our 6th. For our 5th, it's short, short, long. So candida, candida. And then from here on out is where we'll have to decide, you know, what are things short, short, long, or long, long. Tis, mihi, all of that looks short, 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 long. And you can tell tis is long because the 2 consonants right here. So that is the 4th. For the 3rd, same thing. Except one thing I will note is that when things allied like this, it's always going to be long. So you can already tell that it's long, long here. Formosest, so you can kind of cut it off there. That's a really long one. And then formo, there are 2 consonants here. That means that it's long, long. Then you're left with quintia, which you can already tell is 3 syllables, so t, quin, bam. And then for the second line, it's a little bit different. Remember the pattern. So you're going to start off with X, the last syllable, so or. Confite, because it's short, short, long, right? So te, con. And then our next one is also short, short, long, so la, q, sin. And then we get to our half, which is always going to be long, so seek is long. And then the little guessing game. Hike, that's long, so you already know it's going to be long. A, go, short, short, long. And then recta S is also 3 syllables, but I forgot to check beforehand. I was bad at this. There's an elision there, which makes it rectest. So, rectest. Sorry about that. But yeah, the moral of the story is always check for elisions, because those will throw you off when you're scanning, and I always seem to forget to, but now it looks like IHOP. Anyway, that's basically how you scan. I will send you practices, and I'll send you a bunch of like Miss Cush sheets and handouts and things, so that way when we meet, you can we'll look over those and practice a little bit more, and then also translate poem 1. So I hope that was helpful. It's definitely takes a bit to get used to, but after practice, you'll be pretty good.